So this is how you feed your sourdough starter. And you'll also basically need to feed your sourdough starter the 12 hours before you make your dough. So you'll take your sourdough starter, that's what's in here, and it's pretty simple, especially with a digital scale. So what you'll want to do is have another container. That's the easiest way. I tend to use the same container and just figure out how much the container weighed. But this is an easy way of doing it. So what I've done is zero out this on my digital scale. So I teared it out. And I usually like to have about 200 grams to 250 grams of starter when I'm doing a feed. I make relatively large batches, so that means I need a decent amount of sourdough starter. So I'm going to do 250. So now that I've reached 250, I will then put 250 grams of water in there. The water doesn't need to be super hot or super cold, just kind of lukewarm water. I definitely wouldn't do it super hot. Oh, I forgot to mention, so tear it out again. So now your scale goes back to 0. There we go. That's about 250. Now we're going to add 250 grams of flour. You can use different types of flour. It doesn't really matter. So I will add that. And now I zeroed that out, of course, before I added the flour. And now you just mix it up. I normally do this in that bucket, little yogurt bucket thing, but obviously you can do it in any sort of vessel. And they say like the goal is that it should look a little bit like cake batter. I think mine's usually a little thicker than cake batter. You don't have to go crazy with mixing it, just mix it up. I don't know if that comes across, but it's kind of the consistency there. So then you let this sit for 12 hours or more. I mean, it probably doesn't have to be super precise. It will rise a lot, probably double in size. If it's not doubling in size, then there's an issue. It might triple in size. So you might not want to start with 200 grams. You might want to start with, 250 grams. You might want to start with 200 grams. But I think in this 48 ounce tub, 250 grams should work. So once it rises, it's then ready to be used to make dough. And that's kind of the next video where I actually make the dough. A couple things about feeding. You should probably feed it about every week, maybe 2 weeks at the most. I wouldn't go over 2 weeks. If you start to go too far, it could get moldy and die. Once it's moldy, you really can't use it anymore. You'll see sometimes there will be like a thin, like gray liquid on top. That's fine. You can kind of pour that off or keep that in. That's not an issue, but just as a heads up. And it's already starting to bubble. I see bubbles coming up, so you can tell it's active and healthy. So yeah, once again, feed it every 1 or 2 weeks. 1.5 weeks. But really, I never end up feeding it because I always feed it right before I make dough, which I usually make bread probably about once every week and a half. Which like I said, you feed it before you make the dough. Okay, so last night we fed our sourdough starter. Now it's been about 12 hours. So it doesn't have to be overnight. It could be, 12 hours. You do it at 7 a.m. You can then make your dough at 7 p.m. But anyways, it should look like this. It's nice and bubbly and full and ready to go. So then we take our container, and remember, we're gonna tear these out, so it's basically just zeroing it out. So what that is right, if you have something on there and you hit this tear button, it will set the number back to 0, because we don't want to actually incorporate the weight of the bowl or the bucket into our measuring. So I put this bucket on there and I hit that tear and it zeroes it out. What I do is I keep a post-it note of just the grams I need, and then if I want to multiply it by 0.5 or whatever, I have that 0.25, I think. Actually 0.2. So for this, I'm going to use 340 grams of starter, 600 grams of water, and 900 grams of flour. And I'm just using Costco King Arthur's bread flour. So we're going to start with the water. It doesn't have to be hot or cold. It definitely don't make it hot. It could be lukewarm or on the cooler side. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so I put too much water and I'm trying to hit 600. Just like pumping gas in a car. Well, I guess you don't dump out gas. Okay, now I'm at 601. Once again, I'm going to tear out the scale, so I'm going to hit that button to set the number back to 0. Okay, now I'm going to add my starter. Actually, I'll add the salt. And I just use kosher salt. We buy it at Costco, and we have this little thing that we can just put it in, make it more easy, and make it easier. 27 grams of starter, 27 grams salt. Okay, give that a little mix. And you don't even have to do it in this order. You can do the starter first and then the water, or, etc., etc. Okay, now I'm going to tear that back out, and I'm going to add 340 grams of our sourdough starter here. Okay, so that's 346, not a big deal. Actually, what I would recommend doing is just starting with the starter, then doing the water and the salt. I'm not used to videoing myself, so I did it in a kind of an odd order. So then you just mix that up until the starter breaks up into the water. And I'm using our dough whisk here. Kind of set that to the side. You can actually leave this in here and measure it. I typically do that, but just for simplicity, I'm gonna take this out. We do have some starter on there, so I'm just gonna get some of that off. Actually, I'm just gonna leave it in there. Then it'd be the most accurate. So now, once again, I set that to 0. And now I want 900 grams of flour. So you can just pick up the bag and dump it in. Sometimes I'll do that. Or you can just grab it. The nice thing about using grams is you will always be exact. It takes the I don't have to count how many scoops I've done. I've had issues with that before where I forget what number I'm on. Okay, now we're gonna mix it up. We can take it off the scale now because we've done all our measurements. And I wouldn't say it's hard to mix, but once it starts to incorporate all the water into the flour, it'll get a little bit more difficult because you want to kind of go around to the sides, trying to get the stuff from the outside. Really the outside bottom. Actually, this is mixing quite well right now. Eventually you'll get a feel for the dryness or the wetness that you like of the dough. That's really about it. I'll probably take a butter knife and clean out. This dough whisk is actually cleaning up pretty nice. You don't have to over mix it. Just make sure all the flour's incorporated into the water, and then you should be good to go. In the next video, I'll show you the next steps. But it's nothing too fancy or complicated at this point. Everything's kind of separated. What will happen is the gluten will form over time, and then about every 45 minutes we're gonna flip it. Basically, I'll show you how to do that, but that is the majority of the work right there. And I don't know if you can see that, but it is 340 grams of starter, 600 grams of water, 900 grams of flour, and 27 grams of salt. So this is where we do our first, you might want to call it a fold. And you do this probably once every hour, half an hour. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be super precise. But your dough will have, made some movement, start to rise a little bit. I like to wet my hand before I touch the dough. The dough is going to be very wet, and wetting your hand kind of makes it so it doesn't stick as much. So what you're going to want to do is just grab at it, kind of fold it on itself. See, like that. And then you kind of turn a little bit. Now you got it like this, and then you're just going to grab this next little section. So again, fold it over itself. And you don't have to do this super slow. You'll get the hang of it. But then you take this next section, you kind of like scoop, grab, pull, fold, turn a little bit, scoop, grab, stretch, fold. And maybe do that. You can have fun with it a couple times till the dough, you'll start to see how the dough kind of starts to come together and be less, I don't know, choppy. It'll start to smooth out. So you do that once, like I said, every half an hour or so for 3 times, and then you put it in the refrigerator for the next day. You could probably bake it right from there after you've done it a couple times. I've never done that, but you might be able to. Anyways, that's how I traditionally do it. After about 3 times, the things should get pretty tight. It'll be almost in a nice little type shape like this. And there's all the gluten that's formed because it's holding on to itself. And at this point, pretty much done. You can put it in the fridge. You might be able to use it right away. I'm not sure. Okay, so now our dough has risen overnight in the refrigerator. It's cold. It's easier to handle that way. And now you're really done with the making of the dough, and you can make your bread. any way you want it. I'll show you some of the ways I make it. One is in a bread pan. This is a cast iron pan. You don't have to use cast iron. Another is in one of these rising basket things. This is like a piece of cloth, and then under here is this piece of wood. Anyways, I'm going to put a little olive oil in here, and then I'm going to put a little flour in this one. Now, there's several ways to kind of shape your dough. I like to get my hand a little wet, and then I just kind of grab all of it out of here. See, there's a lot of bubbles. It's kind of hard to see. And I just kind of figure out what half of it is. Then just kind of pull it apart. So then I got relatively, I never do it that good. One's always way bigger than the other. So once again, you might want to get your hand wet. Both hands. And then what you do is you just take this and you kind of pull it under itself. It's hard to see. You're just kind of rolling it under itself. You get the hang of it the more you do it. And then for the basket, I'm going to put it smooth side down. And then it will rise in there. Then for the bread pan, just kind of do the same thing. This one I like pull a little bit to elongate the size of the bread pan. So I'll let these rise for probably about half an hour to an hour. A lot of this is variable. You can try different things, but that's what I'll do on these. And probably about a half an hour before I want to bake everything, I will turn on the oven to 450 and put the Dutch oven in the oven. And this is the one I'm going to put in the Dutch oven. Obviously, this will stay in the bread pan. Okay, so it's been about an hour. Our dough is looking significantly more puffy, more relaxed. I'm going to put this one from the bowl onto a piece of parchment paper. I have this pizza peel that makes it a little easier, but we just need it on the parchment paper, and then we'll drop it into the Dutch oven. And that looks like that. If it doesn't come out clean, next time maybe put a little bit more flour on there. Now we're gonna score it, which is basically just putting a cut in it. So when it expands in the oven, when it gets its oven rise, it's able to kind of expand and rise higher because we've scored it. So you can do anything. You could just do one score like that across the middle. You could kind of do another one on each side if you want. You could put little designs and get fancy with it. I'm also going to score the one in the bread pan, but I'll just get out a little knife and do that. So the Dutch oven has been in the oven the entire time for about half an hour. You want it pretty scorching hot. I have my oven set to 450. You can do 500. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the Dutch oven for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll take the lid off of the Dutch oven and let it kind of finish up and brown. Like I said, you can start your oven at 500 and then knock it down to 450 once you take the lid off. For me, since I'm doing a bread pan also, I just did it at 450. And I'll just keep it at that temperature. So you just grab your parchment paper, drop it in there. Some people will put an ice cube kind of on the inside, and that gives it some moisture in there, which is more like a true baking oven. for this right now, I won't do that. Okay, and like I said, I'm gonna keep that in for about 20-25 minutes, and I'll take the lid off the last probably 15 minutes. So it's been a total of about 45-50 minutes. Now the bread's done. Halfway through, actually about 30 minutes through, I took the lid off and then just let it bake without the lid on. Traditionally, I would start at 500 degrees, and then when I took the lid off, I'd put it down to 450. And now it's done. All I'm going to do is put it on these drying racks, let it dry, or let it cool. Cooling racks, I mean, not drying racks. And then after about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, you can cut into it. Then what I do is I cut it in half, and I store one in the freezer, and then get it out. Or you can just eat it all. And that's it.